Hey there, welcome back to our Sky Tonight program. My name is Seth Mayo. I'm the curator of astronomy for the Lowman Planetarium. And in this episode, we're covering the dates of August 9th through August 15th. We're going to start things by talking about Venus in the west, while Saturn is rising in the east at the same time. Then we'll go over the peak of the wonderful annual Perseid meteor shower that's going on this week. And we'll talk about some beautiful things around the radiant of the Perseids that are worth checking out. So let's get to it. Now, if you happen to be planet hunting right now, this is a great time to be looking for our solar system neighbors. And starting in the west, as we've mentioned, we still have a beautiful view of the planet Venus. Right after sunset, you can see it above the western horizon. I've been noticing this planet. It's been really bright. It is the brightest planet that you can see from Earth, and it really shines like this beacon in the sky. And so we have a good view of that. Not too long, though, because it sits low in the sky after sunset, but you have some time to see it. What's great right now is if we look opposite of Venus around this time, all the way over and look towards the east-southeast, that is where we're going to find a whole nother planet. And we mentioned it in our last episode ago when our own Christian Traverson did a great job of talking about the planet Saturn and how it was at opposition on August 2nd. That is when Saturn is closest to us and at its brightest, and it also means that you can see Saturn for the entire night. And although we passed opposition, it's still relatively nearby that, which means that we can still see Saturn for pretty much the entire night. And as I always mention with this planet, it's a wonderful planet to look at through binoculars and especially a telescope. If you ever have a chance to do that, the rings are spectacular. Some of the coolest things you can see with your own eyes, including some of its moons. You might catch one or two of those as well. The moons are very extensive around Saturn. So hopefully you'll find this wonderful planet. It's not as bright as Venus, but it does stand out as another non-twinkling looking star in our sky. Now, what's also great too is you look below and to the left of Saturn, very near the horizon, when Saturn is this high up, and for us locally, this is close to about 9 o'clock or so. But if you do stay up a little bit later, and as things rise a little higher from the east, you have a better and better view of the planet Jupiter. I'll get it to a point so we have a nice view of it. And there it is. Now Jupiter is even brighter than Saturn. And later this month, Jupiter will also be at opposition when it's closest to us in its orbit, which means it'll be the brightest pretty much it gets. And also you can see it for the entire night by then. So that's another great opposition coming up with another large giant gas planet, this time the biggest planet in the solar system. So we'll talk more about that in some later episodes. For this week, we have one of the year's most exciting celestial events, and that is the peak of the annual Perseid meteor shower. This is one of the best meteor showers you can see all year long. Always happens in the middle of August. And it's a meteor shower that originates from a comet called Swift-Tuttle, a pretty well-known periodic comet. It takes about 133 years to go around the sun. What happens is that comet leaves behind a debris trail, and every middle of August, Earth happens to plow into that debris trail. So it's pretty well known that this comet lays down that trail at this time of the year. And Swift-Tuttle is a comet that was last close to us and near the sun in 1992. You'll have to wait until 2126 for it to get close to the sun again, when it would be bright in the sky, possibly here on Earth. But we still experience the trail of it as a meteor shower every year. And where do we find this wonderful meteor shower? Well, this happens inside the constellation called Perseus. That's why it's called the Perseid meteor shower. And Perseus is really a fall constellation, but if you're up early in the morning, you'll start to see it. And I'll show you how to find it. And one of the best ways to do so is to look for a famous kind of well-known constellation right here. It's pretty far north here. This is a constellation called Cassiopeia. Now, Cassiopeia either looks like a W or a letter M, depending on how you turn your head. And it really is noticeable. I always find it in the sky. It's a more northern, or what's called a circumpolar constellation, which means it circles the North Pole, the northern celestial point in our sky. Just for reference here, this is our North Star right there, which can change depending on your latitude and its position. Here in Florida, it sits about 30 degrees north of the horizon, but the farther north you go, the higher this gets. So keep that in mind. Of course, the farther south you go, the lower this gets in the sky. So Cassiopeia is the queen from Greek mythology, and she is very near Perseus. If we look kind of below her, a little bit south of her, there are some stars that to me kind of look like a backwards Y shape. Some of the stars are fairly bright. Some of the others may be a little more difficult to see, but let me draw it out for you here so you can see Perseus. So you can kind of see that backwards Y shape here. Perseus was that mighty warrior, and I'll put up their pictures as well. And in one story, he defeats the Gorgon named Medusa. And that's why in the picture you see him holding Medusa's head right here. He also saved the daughter of Cassiopeia. Her daughter is Princess Andromeda. Cassiopeia was actually not a wonderful mother and actually tried to sacrifice her daughter to a giant sea monster, basically. And Perseus stepped in and saved Andromeda. But anyway, this is where the radiant point for this meteor shower occurs. And just to help us out here, we can kind of go down and click on our meteor shower button here in Stellarium. And there it is, kind of near, at least in this picture, near the head of Perseus, and quite close as well to Cassiopeia, right about there. Now, again, you don't need to exactly know where the radiant point is for any given meteor shower. This is just where you can see the meteors radiate from. So for any meteor shower, you can see them streak across the entire night sky, but you may notice that many of these meteors will originate from an area about here inside of Perseus, where we get the Perseid meteor shower. And this can be a good one. At this time of the year, we're going through the thickest part of the Perseid stream here, of the stream of Comet Swift-Tuttle. And so we're going through the thickest part around the 12th and 13th. And so the actual peak of this is the morning of the 12th. And this is the best time to see meteor showers, usually in the mornings. And that's because Earth is going directly into the stream. And my analogy that I use is like if you're driving in a car and it's a rainy day, and if you're driving into the rain straight on, you're getting a lot of water droplets that hit your windshield. Versus if the rain was going across the windshield, you wouldn't get as many hitting the window. So in the evening, the meteor stream is going across our window, our sky, basically. But in the morning, we're actually heading directly into the stream, just like our car rain analogy of water hitting it directly and you're getting more of it. So you're getting those really fast meteors hitting us directly and you're getting more of them. And that's usually the best time to see a meteor shower, just before sunrise. But all night long, you have a chance to see them. It's just the rate increases. And the rate for the Perseids can be quite extraordinary. It can average between 50 to 100 meters per hour. Usually around 60 is the average, but sometimes more, depending on what part of the stream we are going through. So you never know. Sometimes it goes above 100, but typically around 60 or so, which is a lot. You might see one per minute. So that's pretty exciting to be able to see that many. Dark locations, of course, are very, very important, as well as a clear sky. But if you do get up early enough or stay up really late, you may catch a stray particle of Comet Swift-Tuttle streaming across our atmosphere at tremendous speed. And what's exceptional about this meteor shower viewing opportunity is that the moon will not interfere. Sometimes reflected light from the moon can add a little bit of light pollution in the sky, especially at larger phases and if the moon is nearby. But around the peak, even on the 11th, 12th, and 13th, the moon is still near a crescent phase, which means it's near the sun. And of course, if that's the case, then the moon won't be in the sky. You won't see anywhere else around the peak, especially in the early morning. So that'll be really, really great to have no moon adding any light pollution. And I hope along with that, you'll have a really clear view, your weather cooperates, and you have a chance to go to a dark location and sit out for a little bit to check this one out. Maybe have a little bug spray on hand as well, that might be important. But I hope your chance of seeing the Perseids will be really great, providing a wonderful celestial show. Now, if you do happen to be watching the Perseids and you're spending a lot more time looking in this area of the sky near Cassiopeia and Perseus, there are some other celestial objects that are worth looking for, especially if you're in a dark location and also if you have binoculars or a telescope. Even binoculars will allow you to see quite a bit of what I'm talking about here. And one of the first objects I'll mention is actually very close to the radiant point of the Perseids, And that is something in between these two constellations. And one of the ways to find it is if you go back to Cassiopeia, which looks like an M or W shape of stars. In the middle here, you have these two stars that kind of point to the right. This little blob right here. Actually, you'll see two little blobs here in Stellarium. Now, with your naked eyes, you might see just kind of one fuzzy object. It's hard to resolve the two, but if you have a telescope, or especially again binoculars, that'll be actually even better because binoculars allow you to have a wider field of view. You might see what's called the double cluster in Perseus. These are groups of stars, two of them, that weren't resolved as two until really the 1800s when telescopes really began to be used. And these are two clusters. One's called NGC 869 and the other one is NGC 884. These are big groups of thousands of stars and that lie about 7,500 light years away. This is actually a relatively new cluster at about 12.8 million years old. That is considered new for a star cluster, especially two like this. So the double cluster is nice. You're just going to see so many stars in your field of view through binoculars. It's very bright, but even possibly visible as a fuzzy object with your naked eye. So that's quite a nice object that I look for. I think one of the best clusters in the sky, probably second to a cluster that's also nearby, and that's this one right here. This is the Pleiades star cluster in Taurus, the bull. You see the Taurus constellation kind of pop up here. Pleiades is actually a bit older than the double cluster at about 75 million to possibly 150 million years old and a bit closer to us, 400 to 500 light years away. And this one's also very, very famous and probably the most well-known and recognized cluster. You don't need a telescope or even binoculars to see it, but through binoculars, you'll have a better view of this to see these hot blue young stars and that bluish veil of dust that sits in front of them. It's just a gorgeous sight to see in that area there. And a couple more telescopic objects to see that may be worth. If you're an astrophotographer, let's go back to the radiant point of the Perseids here. We zoom into this area, and if you do have long exposure equipment, cameras that can take great images of the sky, you may be able to catch what are called the Heart and Soul Nebula. If you follow this program closely, back in February for our Valentine show, I did talk about these two what are called H2 regions. These are big globs of gas that are being lit up or ionized by the stars that were born within them. One of them really looks like a heart shape, the one you see here. The other one sometimes looks like a heart, but it's called the Soul Nebula here. This is the Heart Nebula, the Soul Nebula. These are also thousands of light years away. And again, H2 regions of hydrogen being ionized by the stars within. Again, telescopes allow you to see that, especially long exposure photography. So that's also in that area. Another object that's great through a telescope, but even possibly visible with your naked eyes, is above these constellations. If you go above Cassiopeia, you see this big kind of cigar-shaped object right here. That is a galaxy, and that's the famous what's called the Andromeda galaxy sitting inside the constellation Andromeda. I mentioned her earlier, right? The princess, the daughter of Cassiopeia, and the one saved by Perseus, this warrior. So there's Andromeda. Now Andromeda, if you're in a dark enough location, is the farthest object visible to your naked eyes. It's about 2.5 million light years away. The light takes 2.5 million years to travel from this galaxy to reach our eyes here on Earth. But it is possible. But again, through binoculars or a telescope, you might still see a fuzzy ball, but it will be a little more visible. And through long exposure astrophotography, you get sometimes pictures of this galaxy that is on a collision course with our own Milky Way galaxy. And speaking of the Milky Way, the last thing I'll mention in this area, if you are kind of observing this part of the sky as well, you actually find that the Milky Way is going right through it. So there's a lot of great objects to see, especially deep sky objects. But if you are watching a stray meteor or two and have some time for your eyes to adjust, you might find some really interesting things. And it's a good reminder of the hidden gems found all throughout our night sky. That's it for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're at the museum, please stop by our Loma Planetarium. We're running shows every day. Check out our schedule online if you want more information or information about our other events. Thank you very much. I hope to see you back here again. Take care. And of course, happy stargazing.